So we have 90 minutes. We're going to get through as much as we possibly can. It is an honor to be sitting with you, my friend.
You as well.
So I've always been fascinated about how and when someone falls in love with theater and acting. Was yours a school production of Bye Bye Birdie?
Oh, well, it was a community production of
Yeah.
Bye Bye Birdie. I'd actually fallen in love with theater way before that. But,
Okay.
that just happened to be the vehicle that kind of, as they say, when the bug bites, it bit me that summer when I was 11 years old in Long Beach, California. Yeah, Long Beach. It was, one of those odd things. My mother didn't know what to do with my sister and I during the summer, and she put us in this summer program, and I just wanted to build the sets because I was, and still am, sort of obsessed with art and painting and building and things like that. And they said, no, you can't just do that. You have to be in the play, too. So they made me sing America the Beautiful, and they threw me in the chorus, and I was bored one day. And they said, well, if you're bored, do something, and maybe we'll put it in the play. And I made a fool of myself in the middle of the 11 o'clock number of Spanish Rose and Bye Bye Birdie, if anybody knows that. Pretended to be a drunk with a bottle in my hand, and they laughed a lot, and they kept it in the show. So it was sort of the same kind of role I had when I was a kid in my family, which was making my family laugh. That's sort of how it all started for me.
Yeah, but you also wanted to be a cartoonist for a certain point. Yeah, tell me.
I still do. Yeah. I mean, pen and ink and just sitting in my room for hours and drawing and getting involved in, making whatever world it is, or trying to match something, or trying to, I don't know. I got lost in the work, and it's another way to get lost in the arts, I guess. And it was always a comfort for me, and it was probably the easiest transition into the arts for me. It was the most natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a defining moment when you said, I want to be an actor, really be an actor, and try to make a living at it?
No, not really. I just kept doing it, honestly. I done it, in the community summers. Summers were to do plays, and it became that kind of thing. Every summer I would go off and do a play, either in the community, or I studied it one summer at, I'd heard about this program at Northwestern University where high school students could come and study whatever the particular interests they might have, whether it was English or science or whatever, and there was one for drama. And I had heard that that was an excellent school for drama, so I applied to that, and they accepted me. And that was the first kind of eye-opening summer where I really realized how magical acting in plays could be. My parents had Broadway soundtracks and stuff when I was growing up, so musicals had a big impact on me when I was young. But that summer, it was at Evanston, Illinois, and they took us to see some plays, one of which was Fool for Love, Sam Shepard's play at the Steppenwolf Company. And it rocked my world, absolutely. And it made me see the kind of kids that summer who were as passionate about possibly doing this with their lives as I was. We were all kind of dazzled by it that summer, and that kind of made me even more passionate about trying to follow the road. You know?
You received some wonderful training, like you said, a BFA from the Juilliard School, UCLA. I mean, Lithuania's Chekhov Studio Unit, and the British American Drama Academy, but you also got a full scholarship working with Marcel Marceau?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've always been fascinated. No, seriously, I've always been fascinated about him.
Yeah.
And when you look at his film work, all this week I was sitting at home looking at pictures of him, of how his physicality changes with everything you do. So going back to Marcel Marceau, how long was this program? What was it like getting to know him? What did you take away from him that you use in your art?
It was a wonderful summer. It was my second year at UCLA. There was an established scholarship to study
Yeah.
with him. The year before, a young woman had won it. She got to go to France for an entire year to study with him at his school there. And the year that I auditioned for it, he couldn't make up his mind between the four of us who were asked to the finals of it. And so he invited all four of us to come away for the summer to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And we studied with his students during the week, because we were all novices, and I was just kind of captivated by the idea of telling stories physically, and learned how disciplined a practice it was, how the people who can tell a story all by themselves, alone on a stage, how they were able to, his students were able to isolate and move any particular parts of their bodies to tell whatever story they wanted to. It was a discipline that I could appreciate and admire, but learned that summer that it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
But he was passionate, and he was funny, and he talked a lot for a mime. And there were certain things, that he would sort of do on occasion where, you'd sort of see his parts of his body come to life, and you'd sort of, he'd encourage certain things, and it was exhilarating, and it was fun, and then I think I learned that my passion for writing and for words was stronger than the idea of telling stories by myself. So.
Beautiful. You have a stunning career on stage, screen, and television, working with some of the greatest directors and actors. I'd like to mention some highlights, and just tell me what comes to mind, a great story or a fun memory.
Sure.
Again, this is your life.
Oh. This is our life.
This is our life. You started your career in the theater, and Broadway debuts only happen once. And yours was St. Joan? Mm-hmm. How magical was that? What do you remember?
What do I remember?
Yeah.
Making my entrance on stage left at the Lyceum Theater, and remembering as I was doing, okay, here you go, and jumping out there and giving it a go. Michael Langham, who was the head of the drama division at the Juilliard School at the time, was asked to be artistic advisor for Tony Rendell's attempt to create a national theater at the time. And he had directed me in some shows at school, and he invited me to audition for the role of the Dauphin in St. Joan, which was a fun part, quirky, and kind of right up the way the school kind of saw me as, or at least kept picturing or casting me as a kind of buffoon in one way or another. But there was a lot to it. And, you carry your wishes with you and your desires and your hopes and your dreams onto that stage, and then life goes on. And you sort of tuck it in your pocket, and you sort of say, okay, that happened. That was a remarkable experience. I learned a lot from Michael about playing Shaw, about what it means to be a company member, because in the same season, while you're asked to perhaps play a lovely part like that, you're also asked to have one line in a George Abbott play, Three Men on a Horse, where I came on as a photographer, and I said, still, and took a picture, and that was it. That was the whole part. So it was a kind of say, okay, this is the balance. This is what comes with this experience. You get some meat to chew on, and then you support your company members. And you learn a lot about that and about what it means to be together and to tell a story together and all of that. And it was being a part of the company was a remarkable experience, and I've kind of looked on my career from that point on as apprenticeship with everything that I do, because it felt very much like that. Learning things from the people that I got to be exposed to. People like John Neville was in that production, and Elizabeth Marvel, Bill Camp, we were all in the chorus together. We all started as Danny Burstein, 7-time Tony nominee, Tony winner, Danny Burstein, and I. We had the smallest parts in the play. You know, it's like that's where we started, and that's a really wonderful memory and a privilege, really, to be a part of the tradition. That was the other thing, is to be a part of the traditions that were going on in New York at the time, not just on Broadway or off Broadway, but at theaters like the Public Theater, which I had, heard about forever as a kid, and Joseph Papp and all of that. I thought, wow, that's where I want to go see what's going on. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come to New York in the first place, to be with those people, to learn from those people, to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. You did a lot of work for the New York Shakespeare Festival, down at the Public Theater and in the park. How life-changing, professionally and personally, were those years for you?
They were everything, really. They were. I had the great good fortune to have Rosemarie Tischler, who was the associate artistic director down there, teach our class at the Juilliard School. She came in to teach us a cold reading class for auditions, because at that time, this was 1991, 92. They didn't have any on-camera classes. It was all just, at that time, you wanted to create a career in the theater. And I was, she got to know us individually and gave us tips about what it is to get a fresh piece of paper and to say, read in front of strangers, and to get used to those muscles, building those muscles, learning how to do that. And then we had the chance to audition for that summer's production of As You Like It. And as it turned out, they cast me as a William in As You Like It, which is also probably the smallest part in that play. But and Viola Davis too. We were just spear carriers, and we ran around and we told stories, and we got to watch Elizabeth McGovern and Jake Weber and Catherine Misley and Donald Moffat and Richard Libertini and George Morfogen. These are, who were extraordinary individuals and wonderful castmates, and understood what that space was like for the first time, playing in front of whatever, 2,000 people, maybe more, and to build your sea legs, which is all I wanted to do, to get better, and to learn. And so that started what ended up being, I think I've done 10 plays with them now. And I was a part of, I think I jumped right into Joanne Akalaitis' production of Wojciech after that. That was in the Newman space. I got to be in the following summer's production of All's Well That Ends Well. And it went on, and then out of the blue, they, for some reason, gave me an opportunity to audition for Richard II for the leading part in that. And that was a role that I secretly had wanted to do since I had seen it a few years back, and auditioned for it, and they cast me, which was the biggest break that I will probably ever have in my life, because I couldn't believe they gave me a chance. And that's really all any of us want, Give me a chance and I'll show you what I can do. And that's all I've ever wanted in this whole crazy, absolutely bonkers business that we're trying to function in. Just give me a chance to get in the room, show you what I'm capable of, and I'll walk away a happy man. But then to have them say, yeah, come do it with us, was, I burst into tears, and it meant the world to me, because it was, I think, the first time professionally where someone actually said, we see you, we see what you can do, and we want you to come do it with us. And that meant everything to me. So.
You hope in someone's career, you hope that someone opens a door for you. And I've had many conversations with directors and choreographers, and I said, you have to look back and remember to open a door for someone because doors will open for you. And like you said, so Rosemary Tischler's, her casting hall was right next to the men's room on the second floor.
Yep.
That door that was right there, and so many incredible actors, including him and Meryl Streep and Kevin Kline, everybody touched that door and went into that room.
Yeah.
It's like, then you got to do Hamlet down there with Oscar Eustace.
Yeah.
So from Richard II, then you got to do Hamlet. How incredible was that?
That was crazy. That's something that I had always wanted to do and hadn't had a chance to do it. And by the time I did it, I was 39 years old.
Yeah.
Hamlet, at the oldest, I think, is meant to be 28. Not that it really matters, but in some ways, I just had a colleague of mine do it at the age of 29, and that was extraordinary to watch him. He's called Luke Thallon. We did Patriots together last year, and he was extraordinary in it. But it's different at different ages, and I had carried the book with me forever. It was a dog-eared copy of the play, and had been warming up on it for probably 20 years. So to get a chance to do it, it's a funny thing because it was probably one of the things that also made me want to be an actor as a young person. Seeing Derek Jacobi do it on BBC videotape when I was 14 years old in 10th grade, and saying, wow, I want to say those words. I want to, I'm an angry young man and I want to speak all that. So getting to do it was a whirlwind, and to do it in the company with Andre Brower and Lauren Ambrose and David Harbour and Margaret Cullen and Hoon Lee and the extraordinary group of artists that they pieced together just to do the play was a whirlwind. And it's over before you know it, like everything in our lives. You get a couple of months to do that, and they were doing it the same summer as Hair in the park in 2008. And so it was sort of, Oscar wanted to set it in the same period that Hair was taking place in the late 60s during the Vietnam War. And so it was a very particular sort of design for the show and all of that. But I got a chance to say those words, and my 14-year-old self couldn't believe it.
Yeah. When you were doing that, like during the process and even into the run, would you look at the script?
No, I knew it pretty well by the time it came around. I think, in what way do you mean? Because I guess I'm always looking and always trying to ask questions about things. Shakespeare is complicated, but I did feel like the momentum of the story carries you a lot of the way, at least with our production, it seemed to. It was like surfing a wave. If you could catch it early on, it carried you throughout the momentum of the story, and that was thrilling to learn and exhilarating to play. And in some ways, I like to get out of my head. I like to get into my body, and maybe that kind of echoes back to the early physical training that I had, to be present, to be in the moment, to be engaged with the group that's there telling the story in that moment, on that day. That reminds me of Mark Rylance came to see the show early on and opened his heart to me and wrote me the most beautiful note, one of which the sentiment was to just that effect, you are here now with these people. All you have to do is take one step at a time, with as much grace, passion, soul to the role that you can muster. And no one has ever spoken those words before you today. There were some other sentiments in it, and I carry that with me in my back pocket and share it with other Hamlets if I get a chance to meet him beforehand, because it is kind of like a club. And I had the chance to speak with Fritz Weaver about it. We were doing David Mamet's adaptation of Harley Granville Barker's play The Voisey Inheritance at the Atlantic Theater Company, and it was right before I found out I was going to get a chance to do it, and he told me that his favorite part in the playing of it was right after Hamlet sees the ghost. He was so thrilled and so that he felt like he nailed that part of the play. And he said the rest of it was a nightmare. Or not a nightmare, but just sort of like, it's like everything that we get a chance to do. When we get a chance to do it, we're lucky if there's a moment that resonates for us and sort of, that we can carry with us and sort of think, in that moment, that was one of the more special things I've ever experienced in my life. But those moments are few and far between, and in something that enormous and that overwhelming, possibly, you're lucky if something, you can bring something with you. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity, honestly.
Well, you were mesmerizing in that role, just so you know. I visually can see what you did in my head. Right. But it's nice that you get to talk to other Hamlets. It's like when people take on a role, like, I got to talk to 2 or 3 people, and it's like, what got you in there, or what were your favorite parts, or when are you happy when you're through it, or
I didn't think I was enough.
Oh, you were beyond that.
No, but I guess that's something that I also had the great gift of getting to know Cicely Berry, who was one of the artistic founders of the Royal Shakespeare Company. I had done some workshops with her as a vocal consultant when I had worked with the Theatre for a New Audience, working on Cymbeline in 2001. And she welcomed us to get to play it at the other space at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And she tried to encourage me that I was enough. Bless her heart. And I try to pass that on to anybody else who wants to give it a chance. You are enough. I just should listen to it myself, I think, sometimes.
I don't think a lot of actors do. I think it's just like you. They always said, I thought I was better last night, or I'll be better tomorrow. But that just gives you that drive to get out there and just be as great as you possibly can.
I guess so. And then you get another chance tomorrow, if you're lucky.
Yeah. Your breakout film was A Serious Man. The Coen brothers' 2009 semi-autobiographical comedy about a Midwestern Jewish community in the 60s. You played Larry Gopnik, a professor of physics at a local college. I love this movie. I watched it again this week. You had done 35 stage plays before you got this film. So what do you remember about being on the set, getting that role, working with the Coen brothers?
That was the fall right after that summer of Hamlet.
Awesome.
And originally they had brought me in. If anybody's seen the film, there's this strange Yiddish parable at the beginning of the movie where a husband and wife are, it's like the 1800s or something, and they're in a Polish shtetl, and this sort of creepy guy comes in, and they think he's something called a dybbuk, which is sort of a spirit come to life in, that has gotten into the body of somebody else. I auditioned for the part in that parable initially, and didn't speak Yiddish, but I learned it for the audition, and then they laughed a lot, and I was grateful. And then they cast somebody else. And then many weeks went by, and I got a chance to audition for both the part of Larry and for his brother, Uncle Arthur, that Richard Kind eventually ended up playing. I hadn't been I had never been a lead in a film or a television show before. I think the biggest part I had was something on Law and Order or something like that, which took me 13 years to get on to because I wasn't comfortable in front of a camera at all. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing. I just terribly just freaked out at the concept, hyper aware of it. And I think after an amount of time, I think what happened was, I think I needed to grow up a bit. Yeah. And I guess learn about myself a bit. And then eventually it just, once I could relax a little bit, it seemed to open something up in me, or maybe I just started to understand it in a particular way. So getting to be there every day on set with Joel and Ethan, and it was the process of just sort of them saying, "Okay, do you want to look at what you've done when you do it?" I was like, "No, I guess I want to stay in it." And they said, "Great, well, we'll show you something if it comes to that." And we just sort of, maybe had a day and a half of rehearsal, all in all, and then we just jumped in and started making the thing because. I don't know, we were on a schedule, so we went about making it, and we ended a week ahead of schedule and under budget. We just got through the thing because they cast it well, I guess. All of us were pretty right for what it was we were asked to do. And that hasn't happened since with anything that I've been a part of. But also the one thing that project had that nothing else I've ever done has had, which was a script that there was not a change in anything, not a punctuation mark changed. It was perfect when I read it, and it was perfect the last time I read it. And we just gave it a go. And it was really special. And I learned just by doing this whole life has been learning by watching other people do it and learning how a camera can pick up the change in thought, which I had no idea about, having spent, as you said, 35 plays professionally beforehand, where you're using your body. And if you're talking to someone over here and the audience is behind you, they need to hear you as well. This is something different, and it's a different craft. I loved movies. I always loved movies, so getting a chance to do that was another gift of a lifetime. So
I just love how you went into it for a small role, and then another role, and then you're given the lead role.
yeah, it was crazy. It was really crazy. I still don't know why that happened, but I'm grateful.
Well, you were sensational in that film.
Thanks.
You would never know that was like one of the first times in front of a camera. You played Democratic Congressman George, is it Yeaman?
Yeaman, I think.
Yeaman,
Yeah.
opposite Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, directed by Steven Spielberg. Let's hear it for that. So that was the first time you worked with Steven Spielberg.
It was.
Yeah, so let's talk about being cast opposite Daniel Day-Lewis and being on the set for Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just me. There were 180 congressmen and senators in that room, but it was a gift. I mean, in a wonderful way. In that this particular congressman was an important swing vote, and I guess he was. It made a difference in his party for him to vote that particular way. Getting to work with Mr. Spielberg was a complete gift as well, and getting to watch him improvise every day on the set as well, and if he was open to every idea that you might want to bring in. If you'd learned something about your character, you brought it in and shared it, or you had an idea about what a particular moment might be like, he'd say, "Show me," and you just get up and do it. And that happened, actually, in the making of that movie during the scene in which Mr. Yeaman is actually making his vote, and he changes his mind, and he votes the way he does. Stephen loved what I did, but he said, "Damn it, I have to move the camera now." So he was like, pull it back and change the shot. So whatever the idea or the inspiration was for whatever it was I had to offer, he said, "That's great, let's do this. Let's try it again, put the camera there," and he just changed what his ideas were for a particular shot. And I didn't know what to expect. You just come in and you give your heart to something and you hope that everyone wants to play, and he did. And the same thing kind of happened getting to collaborate with him on The Post a few years later. But with Daniel, he is and remains someone I hold on a pedestal in many, many ways. And you got to play in that instance where, you called him Mr. President. And everyone was called by their character names, and when you're in the room, you felt like you were living at a different time, and that's such a gift when it comes to telling stories. You know, some people might think of it as games or as a particular style of acting, but really that's what we do. It's about invention. It's about pretend. It's about putting yourself in a position with a group of people and telling a story. And it served us really well in that instance. He did this one thing to me during the making of that, well, they were changing a lens or something like that. And as his character was applying pressure to my character to vote the way Mr. Lincoln wanted me to vote, he walked up around me when I was sitting in the chair that I was in, and he put his arms on my shoulders, and he pressed down on me with a great amount of weight. And in some ways, it was one of the greatest kind of fabulous gifts that anybody has ever given me in a working environment, in between shots, because whether he could sense I was nervous about being across from him, or maybe it was a way of his Lincoln applying pressure to my Yemen or whatever it was a little thing that he gave to me, which I hold as a kind of magic moment during the course of the day, where he doesn't have to do anything with anybody, but when anyone can be generous, and at least that's how I took it. Yeah. And that's part of the fun of what you get to do, because you never know how these things will influence what it is you want to do or can do. Or I find it's best when you can feed off each other. This act of the fingers, this is what Oliver Platt used to do to me when we were doing Twelfth Night together. Yeah. He was playing Sir Toby Belch, and I was playing Andrew Aguecheek, and it was to him, it's all in here. Yeah. And I found that terrified me, and it still terrifies me, because that's when it's most alive. And I think I began to learn that as a student in classes. I'd present a character how I thought he might move or speak, and asked a million questions about that. But until you were brave enough to engage with each other, it wouldn't come to life. And I find it's a privilege to get a chance to do that together. And it's within that things do come to life. And I find that if it can surprise you in the doing of it, it surprises most likely everybody else who's engaged, or if they are engaged with what you're doing. So that was a gift. And Daniel's a very special man. He is a mystic in ways, and I'd love a chance to get to play with him again. I'm so glad he's back at work again.
Me too. You mentioned The Post. I mean, you appeared opposite Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. What a team. You enjoyed working with them a lot. Tell me, I mean, that's like two of the greatest actors.
Yeah, they are, and they are because of who they are as individuals. I mean, apart from what it is that they do and how captivating they can be in their own gifts, and how they've, allowed all of us to forget our lives over and over and over again with what they do. Miss Streep was so much fun and so sort of like nervous doing her own things, which was so silly. We just sort of played around a little bit. In our little scene that we had together, I played Abe Rosenthal, who was the head of the New York Times, and kind of a rival to the Washington Post in that story. And it's about the release of the Pentagon Papers, and the Times had released some of them, and the Post was hemming and hawing about what it was they wanted to do. And we had this little meeting, the character of Abe and Katharine Graham, and we just sort of were giggling a lot together, which was a delight, because you never know, again, what you're going to get with anybody. And a lot of people say, never meet your heroes, because they're going to let you down or whatever, but she couldn't have been more fun. We stood there sort of dancing with each other, sort of like waiting for them to, get the shot ready. And we were like at the 8th grade prom, just trying to keep each other's energy going. And there was something very fluid about what she could do. And I had watched this with Mr. Hanks as well. They could be having a conversation with anybody, just chatting about something, getting their blood flowing, or talking about whatever. And then whatever that energy was, it just went right into the scene. They could call action, and it was immediate. They could take whatever. They trusted themselves implicitly. And I never trust myself. Unless I'm out here talking oddly, I mean, this is, it's a very warm place to be on a stage. I've always found it to be a comfort because in some ways it's quiet. And there's a lot of noise out there. Yeah. And for someone who's ridiculously sensitive like I am, it's a place of respite to be and to share. And I hope it continues. And I believe it will, and it has. I just say that because our lives have become so technically influenced that talking to each other is, I think, where we can save each other, in my opinion.
Yes.
I don't know. I believe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to, in the same way that Stephen improvised with the camera on the Lincoln set, he also did it with the post set. At the beginning of that film, initially, it was supposed to start at what was, they had recreated Truman Capote's black and white ball at the Plaza Hotel, and we shot it in the Plaza Hotel. And it was this, I don't know, it ended up being a 7-minute sequence that they ended up taking out of the movie completely. But we did get to shoot it, and watching all of these actors playing all of these parts of all those people. It was originally thrown for Katharine Graham. That's why it was included in the story. And I came up with an idea. I had done some research on my character, Mr. Rosenthal, found an anecdote, something he used to say to reporters often and often. I included it in, and Stephen said, yeah, let's use it, and we got to shoot it. But it wasn't included in the movie, but it was still one of those things where you felt like you were a part of the event, and you could offer your own research, and he was game for it. So that was a privilege too.
Yeah. I want to go back to theater for a second. You got to do Taking Sides, which is the Ronald Harwood play with Ed Harris.
Yeah.
It was the two of you up there. Very generous actor, right?
Ed Harris, Daniel Massey.
Oh yeah.
Ann Dowd.
Yeah.
The extraordinary Ann
Sure.
Dowd.
Yeah.
Norbert Weiser, Elizabeth Marvel, and myself.
Great cast.
This is 1996, and yeah, with Ed, I carry in my pocket that he was, and still continues to be, one of those people who is bold and brave and never repeats himself, no matter what. We all got in trouble on a couple of matinees by stepping out of our light a number of times because his passion or whatever his character was going through on that day happened to just, go into a part of the stage that wasn't lit. And the stage manager got mad at everybody, and we were all like, but come on, we're in the story, we're telling the story. And he's like, But I loved him for that. And talk about power and generosity and teammate. Yeah. Ed and Daniel and Anne and Norbert and Elizabeth, we all had a profound experience working on that together.
Yeah. You can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
I just watched Men in Black 3. Men in Black 3 fans here? Where you play Griffin, an alien with clairvoyant abilities. Yeah. What a hoot. I watched it again last night before this. How much fun was that film to do?
That was just like me running around in my pajamas as a kid. That was what it felt like. That was sort of who I am. Most of the time. Is an alien. I feel like an alien most of the time. And a privilege, and it came out of nowhere. It was like all of a sudden Barry Sonnenfeld called me up and said, let's go have a meal. There's something I'm thinking about. So we did, and he had been the Coen brothers cinematographer for some of their earliest films. And so he said, and we talked about getting to work with them and what that was like. And they said, look, we've got this character. We've shot 30 pages of this screenplay already, and we're on hiatus right now. And can you come in and play with us for a while, and we'll figure out who this character is. This is, a Men in Black film. This is a multi-million-dollar crazy thing, and it just felt like, in the end, he invited me in. I got to sit with Will and with Josh Brolin, who was in the film at the time, and we would just talked about character and figured out what this crazy alien would be. But they welcomed me in with open arms, and it was another privilege to get to play with those guys. They are beyond in every aspect of who they are as artists and as people, and it was great fun to play. And I miss playing like that. For some reason, I haven't got a chance to do a lot of that kind of stuff, but it's been a privilege to get a chance to do that, and I hold that one close to my heart too.
Just a hoot to watch all over again,
Good.
seriously. And knowing what all the great stuff he's done, it's so nice, like you said, being a kid
Yeah.
and just doing that. You played Dr. Flicker in Woody Allen's film Blue Jasmine, working with Kate Blanchett and Bobby Cannavale and Alec Baldwin. What was Woody like to work with?
Hard.
Yeah, I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, you know, to be honest.
Yeah.
He knows what he wants. And in those circumstances, I learned pretty quick that I would have to, I think in some ways, maybe it had something to do with him needing to get up there and be Dr. Flicker himself in some ways. So he would sort of give it a go, and I ended up sort of following his lead in terms of what he wanted. I mean, I came in with my own ideas, but that was, it was peculiar because I'd never quite been in a situation like that before. I mean, once as a drama student, but to have him sort of walk through it in some ways. And also, I had asked for a rehearsal for a scene in which my character makes a pass at Kate Blanchett's character. And I was concerned about, you know, let's plan it out. Let's be physical. I don't want anyone to get hurt during the course of what it is that he wants us to do, and he wouldn't allow us to rehearse. So there was something, I mean, and honestly, people are of two minds with this kind of thing. You can bring your research in with you, you bring your passion in with you, you bring in your ideas with you, and then a director says, we're not going to rehearse something. You trust each other, and I think she and I bonded very quickly on that, and I think we learned to trust each other very quickly, and we ended up not having to do it more than once. And I think one of the special aspects of making films in general is trying to capture lightning in a bottle and whatever fear that might come off of a situation where you are ending up wrestling with somebody. Film cameras capture it. I remember hearing an anecdote, and I'm not sure if anybody else may have heard it either, but about Lawrence Fishburne having to do a scene in What's Love Got to Do with It, where his character was, you know, abusive to Angela Bassett's character in the Tina Turner story. And he told everybody on the set, and I admire this greatly, say, I'm going to do this once. Yeah. So be ready. You know, know where your camera's going to be, know where everything is. I'm going to do it one time. And they got it during that one time. And I guess that's part of the experiment. I mean, filmmaking is like a war campaign, in my experience, my limited experience. It was the same thing on Shape of Water, where, you know, there was a scene late in the movie where my character gets shot in the mouth, and Michael Shannon's character, you know, fish hooks me through the cheek where the bullet went through and drags me to a sand pile and throws me in the sand pile. And they made fake rain, and then it really started to rain, and we shot that scene all night long to get it the way it was meant to be. And it was freezing outside, and you know, these are little things. That's part of the war stories that you tell, and if you get a chance to actually make them, which is a privilege. And I bring that with me, and I feel blessed to have been a part of it. But when these stories are told on celluloid, it's like the way records were made, you know, originally. The music went on directly, whatever was happening in that room went directly onto that record. And in the same way, if you're shooting something on film, whatever it is that you're doing gets captured on there, and it's burned on there. And so that's why people try to be as true as possible with whatever it is that they're making. And it's a different kind of play. And interesting. But yeah, I learned a lot of things in the short amount of time I was on Mr. Allen's set.
Yeah. I spoke to a lot of actors like this, and they say, I knew what I took away from that, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said, every time you go onto a set, it's a whole new family, a whole new set of tools that different people use, you know, and I'm sure every director is different.
They are.
You mentioned Guillermo del Toro's
Yeah.
The Shape of Water. What a
Yeah.
beautifully visual film and a beautiful film to watch. What was he like as a director to work with?
He was the best.
Yeah.
He was like the general of the war campaign, you know.
Yeah.
He couldn't have been more of a cheerleader for everybody there. And he also is a singular director in many ways because he so adores his characters, which he wrote that piece as well, co-wrote it. And he gave us all these huge biographies about who our characters were, and with full of information that was either useful or not useful.
Yeah.
Packed. And it was like, extraordinary to just. You never know what to expect when you get an opportunity to work with people like that. And he drew every day. He wrote every day. He invited people out to dinners. He was warm. He was full of enthusiasm. He knew everybody's name. He was the best. And gosh, and I loved what I got to do. It was full of challenges as well. I got to study Russian and try to be, try to be Russian. It was a privilege and a piece of art unlike any other that I've had the chance to be a part of. And he also, designed every inch of that set, knew how he spent years, months and months of time creating that creature.
Yeah.
And drawing and drawing and drawing. He was that kid in his room drawing as a kid as well, so we had that in common. And one of the pictures you'll see if you go back and look at it, there's a moment where the doctor that I played opens his book, and there's a drawing of the sea creature, and I spent a lot of time drawing that, and he included it in the movie. So that's kind of like,
He reminds me of one of those great directors, European directors from the 50s and 60s or 70s, who took their cast out, knew everything. It's like, we play hard to make these movies, and then and then you work hard, but you play hard. You go to dinner, you decompress, you talk about the next day, and like you said, you shot that scene. You didn't mind doing it in the rain, because you loved him as a director, and you knew he wanted to capture the vision that he wanted, and you want to go that extra mile for someone like him.
With visionaries
Yeah.
like that, I just want to please them and help them achieve whatever vision it is that they had for something, and you just hope that you can fulfill. I do. I tend to just want to please.
But I love that he gave you all this research that you would know before because he wrote these characters brand new, yet he gave you all this stuff to read, put into your body, and then do what you want with it, you know?
Yeah. Choose it, use it, or don't.
I love it. You played Edward G. Robinson in Jay Roach's historical drama Trumbo, another one of my favorite pictures. You excel in finding such depth and complexity in such well-known figures. Now, Edward G. Robinson, we all know from film work. I never knew him as the man, which is what you play in this movie. What kind of research did you do? Because you love doing research, don't you?
I adore it. And there's nothing more intimidating than trying to play somebody who's famous.
Yeah.
Either. And I was terrified, and I tried to. We ended up, got to work with an extraordinary latex artist who built a fake nose for me.
Yeah.
So the nose in the film is not mine. And oddly or not, I read his biography, his autobiography, like All My Yesterdays, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And I smoked the kind of cigars that he used to smoke, and it's odd because he looked a lot like my grandfather. Actually, my grandfather on my dad's side. And there were elements of him. I think I got so caught up in who he was as an individual that I didn't really try to play him as that well-known kind of gangster guy that we saw in the movies. Yeah. And then it was Brian's idea, Mr. Cranston's idea, to try to throw in a little scene in there where we could watch him making a movie at the last minute, which terrified me all the more because there was an excerpt from one of his films. I think it was, what was it? the scene where he's getting shaved or whatever, and I wanted the camera in the original film was like really close to his face, and I thought, oh, from that angle, I actually look a little bit like him, so maybe we can make it that way. And he said, now we're going to do this other thing. So I found some other silly things to apply to it, but it's really intimidating, and I think people expect a certain level of, of course they do, they should, if you're supposed to be playing somebody who was famous. And it was an absolute privilege, though, learning about who the man was and the particular struggles that he went through at the time of his life. And I was actually, a little bit younger than him at the time I was walking in his shoes, so to speak. But I found we had a lot in common in a lot of ways. He was a man of the theater as well.
Yeah.
And loved telling stories. He loved art. He loved all kinds of things. And I think I just try to, submerge myself in all the information there is out there. Some things will stick, some things won't. And maybe you can use some of it and sometimes you can't. But what a rich life he lived, and what an interesting time in his life that story showed us in glimpses.
Yeah. You mentioned Bryan Cranston, one of my all-time favorite people.
Yeah.
Great to work with him.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Natural leader, gregarious, funny as all get out. Big heart, comes to see the plays that I've done.
Yeah.
I go to see his. He's your biggest champion and your best friend, and will leave you alone. And we've had walks together and talks together, and he's been a mentor to me in lovely ways and very supportive. And I'm so happy for his success in this world. I mean, it's like he burst out of the gate with so many ideas of things that he wanted to do, and he's gotten to do so many of them. And I can't wait. He's doing All My Sons in London as we speak. They're rehearsing for it. Ivo van Hove, who directed him in Network, they're collaborating again on that with a fantastic cast. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Besides being one of the most talented, he's one of the nicest men I've ever met.
Yeah.
I adore Bryan.
Me too.
As you do. You have worked numerous times with director Luca Guadagnino.
Yep.
Okay, got something out. Fabulous. The first time in one of my favorite films, Call Me By Your Name. Where you starred opposite a newcomer, Timothée Chalamet. You play his father, Samuel. What did you enjoy the most about working on that film and working with Timothy?
Well, come on, it's like it was like a gift from heaven.
Yeah.
It's a James Ivory piece. He wrote it's like there's a new James Ivory movie, and Mr. Guadagnino wants to meet you for it. And I didn't know who he was at the time, but he invited me to come see a screening of I Am Love. And we met briefly afterwards, and he gave me the script. I brought it home. I read it, and the next day I said yes. It was, there was no question about it. And getting to go shoot in a foreign country, particularly in Italy, and this was just outside of Milan, a little ways, where we shot it in a little town called Crema, and Timmy and I actually had. He had been offered a play by John Patrick Shanley at the Manhattan Theater Club that I had been offered as well. And I had done 2 readings of it previously, and for some reason we never got paired together in either of those readings. And he ended up doing the play, and I ended up not doing the play. So it's funny to think that not long after that we ended up playing, getting a chance to play together in a very intimate fashion, as that play would have been. It was so much fun being around him at that time in his life with Army, and watching them terrified and trying to figure out what it was they were going to be making together. And I got to observe all of that, and we shot it somewhat in sequence. So the scene towards the end of the film where we were sitting on a sofa together, and I tell him some really beautiful things. I had had 2 months of time to get to know them all as individuals, particularly, and to watch him struggle with and flourish in that role, in that story, in this beautiful country. And talking about as well earlier, you mentioned that sometimes directors will, invite casts in, and Luca is a remarkable chef as well, and he'd make us meals and things like that, and we'd have movie nights where we'd come over and watch things they wanted us to watch and to get us excited about something we were going to be doing, and he'd make these, a kitchen full of food, and as magical as it sounds, it was all of that. And he really wanted us to be able to capture one of those summers in a young person's life when something magical happens for them, to make it as full of joy and fun as possible. On the page, it could have come off very, very dry. A lot of talk about archaeology or, ancient sculpture or whatever. But just the little touches of direction from Luca and these encouragements of, come over, let's have a meal together, let's break bread, let's get to know each other. It just made the experience all the more cohesive for all of us, brought us all together. And, it remains, one of the most profound experiences of my life, because you never know how any of this is going to come out, if it's going to affect anybody. In fact, most of the time we do this, as you all know, and you hope somebody takes something away from it. I know I did, and I have. Connection in any particular way is essential. That's why we do this. I mean, it's why I've done it, or to share our humanity with each other, and to make us feel a little bit closer together, and that we're not in this experience of living alone. Why not do this with our lives, eh? And that was such a beautiful story in so many ways. It's a privilege.
Yeah. I love, as you mentioned, the sofa scene. I watched that movie again. I watched that movie a lot, but the scene between the two of you is just, it's heartbreaking. It's just so full of life, and you get teary-eyed, and you just feel watching it. I love that you filmed it in sequence. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But now you all work together again. You work with Luca and Timothy again on Bones and All,
Yeah.
a romantic horror film. Talk about the role in working with them again.
Got to play a cannibal
Yep.
in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the woods. That was out of left field too.
Did it make it easier doing a film like that with people that you love?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? Yeah, we get to be cannibals.
Yeah, totally.
And his life had just, he just shot straight
Yeah.
into the stratosphere. So he was in a crazy place. It was like hanging out with the Beatle or something, because, we were like, I drove him to the motel that he was staying in, and his life was just such a whirlwind, and it couldn't have happened to a sweeter person. I'm so glad, because he has so much to share, and he's got so much enthusiasm and skill and charm, and so fun to be with. So that was a privilege, and that's such an interesting story, and that, David Kazganich's script is extraordinary, and it's an odd love story and a wonderful metaphor in many ways to a lot of things. But it was odd. I mean, just to get that thrown at me, and Luca paired me up with this wonderful actor-director, David Gordon Green, and we had a great time. We got to play musical instruments. We sang together. I wore, covered myself in dirt and wore, overalls and sat by the fire in the middle of the night in Cincinnati, in a mud pit, and basically just, and told part of the story, which that was fun too. It's just like a big improv. It all feels like a big improv, not just life and not just this work, but I mean, you do as much as you can to prepare, and you throw yourself into it, and it's never going to be what you expect it to be, but you bring your ideas, and then you're present, and you never know what's going to be caught either. That's always part of the fun afterwards, to see what it is that you've made together. It's just fun. It's just fun.
You mentioned improv, because I want to talk about Martin Scorsese. You worked with him how many times?
We made the first thing I did with him was this 20-minute homage to Hitchcock.
Yeah.
It was actually a commercial for Cava Frisinet out in New Jersey, in an airplane hangar out in New Jersey together. We did this crazy thing. It's called The Key to Reserva. And it's a wonderful, crazy little movie we made with, gosh, Kelly O'Hara, Simon Baker, Chris Denham, myself, Richard Easton, the 5 of us out in this thing. And we made this silly little thing. The idea was he was going to make a movie. He had found 6 pages from a Hitchcock script that never got made, and he's going to make him in the style that Hitchcock would have made him back at the time that it was written. And we were all playing, these sort of characters loosely based on characters from North by Northwest. I was the James Mason character, and it was silly and fun, and I got to know him a little bit through that, and then I got thrown into the mix for Boardwalk Empire. And he shot the pilot, and he was, looked at everything we shot over the 5 years that we ended up making, the 5 seasons that we ended up making. Yeah. He asked me to do Hugo, the film based on the book Invention of Hugo Cabret. So I got to be a part of that with him. And talk about improvs. Yeah, he just loves trying to bring life to any particular situation. It's just about that, bringing something to life, and he welcomes anything and everything, and he's a great supporter of everybody, and just wants to make your job as easy as possible. Yeah. He's full of encyclopedic knowledge of film, as everybody knows, and supportive, just generous, supportive, fun. You want to do your best work. He asks you questions about your character. He says, "Have you ever seen this movie? Oh, you haven't seen? I'll send it to you." And then all of a sudden you get a stack of, DVDs in the mail. It's like, see these movies. It's like, okay. How much better can it be than that? Somebody wants to share their joy and their love and their knowledge with you. It's just privilege.
Yeah, because everybody who's worked with him on a set say it's just one of the most magical things.
Yeah, it's fun.
And you want to do it again and again.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah.
Boardwalk Empire fans here, HBO. Arnold Rothstein, the notorious Jewish gangster. Must have been a fabulous role to play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, beyond. Yeah. A new biography had come out, not long before we started, so I just dove into that and devoured it as much as possible and learned a lot about who he was, what his life was like. And got kind of obsessed about learning about what his life was like, and trying to apply that to the combination that they were trying to do with that story in particular of marrying true characters with fictional ones. Another privilege and great, and getting to work with that cast,
Everybody loved living in that world.
Loved it.
Where you filmed it. Was it Brooklyn or somewhere on these beautiful sets that were built, and you were in this other time period?
Yeah, it's the best.
And what a great look. Again, I go back to this, just look at pictures of him in all the films he's done. You know it's Michael, but you're looking at a character. I just love that your stature changes, the glasses you wear, there's something you do with your face. You become these people. So when you're working on someone, is your process the same when you get a project either on stage or on film, when you look at a script? Like, how does this person walk? How does he look?
It depends if the person's lived or not, but on the whole, it's never the same.
Yeah.
Twice. You never know how you're going to find your way into something. In some cases, it's quite rigorous. I mean, in some ways, that's very helpful. If someone lived a particular way and there are photographs of someone, and you can see, footage of them or something like that, and then someone like Mr. Rothstein, there are only 3 pictures of him out there that I could find, I think. So in some cases, having that structure is really helpful for me. I know that if I go beyond a certain point, it may not be, it may not recognize that person anymore. But you never know if it's going to be with voice, with movement, with the words, with the thoughts, with how they think. I just try asking a million questions and with my collaborators and sharing it. And if something's not working, I hope they tell me. you never quite know. But it's another opportunity to find something new. I learned that, the more you dig, the more you'll unearth.
It sort of frees you up at the same time. The more you take in on something, I'm sure it helps you sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like doing a play night after night after night. It's never going to be the same night after night because the people who are coming in the room are different, and their energy is going to be different. And that's the miracle of what this is. I mean, people who don't do plays sometimes think, how could you tell the same story night after night? Well, try it, and it will never be the same night after night because you're different every night. And it's also a miracle to me that every time you read something, you'll unearth something new. More often than not. Yeah. It's just applying yourself to it, or getting some distance from it, then coming back to it. I learned that from some of my colleagues, that they, actors I've met who never dropped their script. They just kept writing new questions, erasing other parts, and let's try this tonight. Let's try something else. That can keep it going, and in applying it to character work, the more you ask, the more different it's going to be for you. Yeah. In the doing.
I think I read somewhere where a director found one of your scripts for something, and there was markings everywhere with all this stuff they couldn't decipher. But I love actors who dissect everything. Yeah. You do that, don't you? Sometimes?
I think we all kind of come up with our own systems, and for me, I'm color-coded, and there's tabs here and there, and there's sort of all kinds of things that can remind me that something else might be happening at a particular moment, or it reflects back to something that happened in the first scene that has some resonance in the seventh scene or whatever it is. Yeah. It's just all about reminding myself of certain things that have happened, which is really at the crux of, at the beginning of what it was studying to be an actor in the first place, text analysis. What do you know? What don't you know? What just happened? Where are you going? What do you want? What's useful? And it's odd because the practice itself, I find, is very much outside of my head. I don't like to be thinking about those things when I'm doing it. Yeah. I like to have thought about it beforehand and then just show up because something new is going to happen when I get out there anyway. So,
because in film and TV, a lot of times you're doing a really big, crucial scene. Is one of the first two scenes you shoot. Yeah. So it would make a lot of sense to do that. But was that something you learned easy starting in film, or over time, being shot out of sequence, all of a sudden we're going to give you, your death scene is going to be the first thing you shoot, and you have no idea. Right. You haven't had the chance, in a play, you have a whole arc to work into that. Right. And that's the genius of great acting. But I was asking you.
Well, if you're lucky enough to have the time to prepare, you can learn about that arc initially so that you know where you might be at that time. It's always going to be a challenge. What do we know? What don't we know? What has happened? What hasn't happened? Can you help me remember these things? Remember this. Don't remember, that hasn't happened yet. Go. Yeah. And you give it a try, and hopefully you get something you can use.
No, I love that. When people ask me what are some of my all-time favorite stage performances, you're on the top 5 list of your portrayal of Michael in Martin McDonagh's The Pillow Man. I visually see everything from that play in my head as we speak. You shift throughout the play from victim to victimizer, simpleton to sadist. I mean, just a beautifully crafted performance. You received a Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Featured Actor in a Play and a Tony Award nomination. Living in Martin's play and in that world. Challenging, tough. What was it like?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Kind of like Men in Black 3 in an odd way.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of softness about that character of Michael, and it reminded me of the playfulness of when I was a kid. I mean, kind of like, making a fake mustache and taping it on my face when I was 7 years old, and putting on one of my dad's raincoats and a hat and pretending to be a private eye or something like that. In some ways, he just sort of I played around alone in my bedroom and just sort of found who this guy was, in all the years that he suffered, and where, how do you find the need to say what he says? That's always, and to make it feel like it's yours. What's the need to speak, and who is this person that's speaking, and how does it come out of you? I remember being surprised in the same way that, I don't know if you guys have taken mask classes before, but part of what the fun I had in school was we had these half masks that our mask teacher, Pierre Lefebvre, would bring into class. And the goal was you take this half mask, you not even really looking at it, you put it on and you walk up to a mirror, and just from staring at the image that you see in the mirror, you find a way to speak and move based on what it is that you see. And so it was a sort of the outside-in kind of approach to something. And in some ways, it felt very much like, how are these words that I'm given to say going to come out of me in a manner that will make sense, that will feel right? And I just kind of built on it as I started to feel his voice coming out of me through the actions that I found myself doing. And you take the given circumstances of someone who's been trapped in his parents' home and has been tortured for most of his life, and you start to ask, well, okay, how did he survive? How does he get by? How does he spend his days? And I started to think, well, he's going to probably do a lot of comfort eating. And so I put on too much weight for that show. I was like probably 45 to 50 pounds heavier than I am now. It served who this guy was. I mean, in some ways, he kind of was a pillow man. Yeah. Another thing about that whole experience was the collaborative effort, not just with the actors, but with Scott Pask, who designed the set, as well as the costumes. He let us play in the costume racks, and we got to find the pieces together so that we owned it as much as anything we've ever done before. So that was, Martin's language is so funny, and so dark in places. And that story in particular is quite moving in places and quite shocking and surprising. And they did such beautiful things with bringing it to life. I never got to see it, but being inside of it was a treat. And listening to people be shocked every night was so much fun. And that's the longest run of a play I think I ever did, 7.5 months. Billy Crudup, Jeff Goldblum, Željko Ivanek, and the supporting cast of a couple of other kids and some young adults who've gone on to do some great things too, which is exciting, but huge privilege.
The emotional journey you took us on. You got shingles towards the end of the run, didn't you?
I did. Well, if you're smothered with a pillow night after night, and the blood rushes to your face night after night, one night, close to the end of the run, something popped out of my forehead, and I woke up the next morning and had to go to the hospital. My whole face was swollen up, but I didn't miss the show. Yeah. We covered it up, and I made it back. But yeah, this little faint scar on my forehead is my gift from the Pillow Man.
So I wasn't sure if it was from the emotion you did in the show or it was from the pillow.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
To be honest with you, I have no idea, but that's made the most sense to me. All that sort of struggling for what they wanted to be an extended period of, is he gonna survive it? Is he not gonna survive it? It was night after night after night after night, 8 times a week.
Just a breathtaking performance, though.
Thanks.
Really, really wonderful. You played Richard Sackler in the Hulu miniseries Dope Sick. Let's hear it. And Danny Strong created this, who's now rewritten the book for chess.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Among many other things.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah. But I just spoke to him, so I was like, oh, theater, here he comes, coming to Broadway. Did you love playing him? I mean, I'm sure the research you did for Sackler, too. What's it like playing a dark character or someone you know is doing something bad?
In that case, I felt like his backstory allowed me to understand a little bit about the psychology of someone who's created something that is so harmful
Yeah.
to people, and who he was as an individual and what it was that was important to him. You find, I guess, I don't know if you need to find, but I found some justification for some of the initial motivations he had about trying to make a name for himself as an individual.
Yeah.
He was the nephew of a guy called Arthur Sackler, who basically was a huge influence in medical advertising, which didn't really much exist before. No, he did these huge campaigns for Valium and things in the 50s. And, you know, they became a very wealthy family. And Richard kind of grew up in his shadow.
Yeah.
And I think probably needed to make a name for himself. And within that family, he was a doctor himself, but I don't know if he commanded much respect within his family. And then he's tried to, you know, go about making something and, you know, let the chips fall where they may in regards to its safety. And you have the opioid epidemic because of it. So you learn about these things and you put them in your mind, and you tell that story in pieces.
Yeah.
And you play the moment, you know, and you let other people judge it for what it is when it's all pieced together.
Yeah.
Interesting story, and an important one. I'm grateful to have been a part of it.
Yeah. You joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe, playing Nicodemus West in Doctor Strange, Doctor Strange, and the 2022 sequel. What's it like living in the world of Marvel?
I didn't live it for very long.
Yeah.
But I thought I mean, when the idea came up that I would maybe participate, it was for a different part once again. And then I read the comic book where this character showed up in it, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting story. I don't know if they'll ever get to it. It's not in this movie, but maybe they'll make it later on, where he kind of blames himself for, he operates on Doctor Strange and ruins his hands.
Yeah.
And he goes off on his own kind of quest and learns the same kind of powers that Doctor Strange has. So it was kind of a fun journey, I thought, that he had. And it had a bigger arc than the character that they initially presented to me. So I sort of threw out the idea, well, what about this guy? And they said, okay. And they went along with it. So it's been a funny ride so far, and a brief one. And, you know, maybe they'll get to this character, maybe they won't, and that's okay. Either way, it's been fun to get to know those people. And Benedict has been so lovely and warm, and such an accomplished artist. To be surrounded by folks like that under those circumstances has been fun.
Fargo, you played Cy Feltz. Great, fun show to work on, great show.
Absolutely.
I talked to all the actors who've done Fargos, and they're all like, the time of their life working on that.
It was a very memorable time, especially to get to be in the Coen Brothers universe in one way or another again. I was a little concerned because at that point I was very concerned that I didn't know what Joel and Ethan's involvement was with it, except as executive producers.
Yeah.
And they sort of said, well, it's all the creator Noah Hawley's baby, and they just let him do what he wanted with it. So, you know, at that point, a couple of other individuals who had been in some of their movies, like Billy Bob Thornton, had been in the first season of it, and David Thewlis, who was in The Big Lebowski, was also in the season with me, the third season. And so I felt like there's a token member from like some of the other movies in telling of these stories, and it was really fun character to play this guy. You know, a bit of a I don't know. I don't want to judge him.
Yeah.
But fun to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to work with Bryan Cranston again in the TV series Your Honor, where you played Jimmy Baxter. Again, reuniting with Bryan Cranston and playing that role, what it meant to you.
A surprise to get to play with him again, but an absolute privilege. And that character initially had so many layers to him, being a hotelier deeply ensconced in the world of New Orleans and involved with oyster fisheries and all this other sort of stuff. But all the audience is mostly privileged to is him being somewhat of a gangster, which honestly I was trying to steer away from. And I thought all those other colors of him. He was a father as well, and his relationship with his children was primary to him, and he had quite a contentious relationship with his wife. There was enough texture and interesting aspects to who he was behind the scenes that I felt like it would be fun to explore because of all those varieties of things. And I tried to stay away from the idea of him being a bad person for as long as possible.
See, that's why I love when you play a certain type of somebody, but you try to find the human side and the other story, the backstory of their life.
That's how it becomes different, and how it becomes unique. And it's because all that stuff that maybe my behavior will change, or maybe someone won't recognize me from one thing to another, which is important, I think, to me, to try to do as diverse things as possible. It's made my career difficult, I think, in some ways, because I think some people think of me in one way and others think of me in other ways. But it's an okay problem to have.
Yeah. You got to work with Edward Zwick on Pawn Sacrifice, and you play Paul Marshall, the attorney promoter who helps guide Bobby Fischer to become the world chess champion in 1972, which I believe was the match of the century.
Yeah.
I mean, Tobey Maguire, what an interesting role to play, I would think. I loved your look in that with the glasses, the hat, and everything.
That was initially meant to be an amalgam of two different people. It turned out that I adored, once I had started the research, Paul Marshall, and then as luck would have it, I found his widow, Betty Marshall, online, gave her a call. She's a professional photographer down in Florida. And I said, I've been cast as your ex-husband. And she was so warm and so welcoming. She sent me photographs, and she told me all kinds of stories about him. That's the good stuff, if you get a chance to find it. And it really brings to life who he is. I loved playing him and learning about who he was, and how much humor he had. Chain smoker all the time. She said, you did smoke a lot in the movie, but not as much as Paul did in real life. And I knew nothing about chess too. What an opportunity to sort of learn something about a game I knew nothing about. Another privilege. And Ed is so smart and a natural leader too.
Yeah. You were last on Broadway as Boris, is it Berezovsky?
That's right.
In Peter Morgan's Patriots. Go, let's hear it. This was, again, one of the most riveting shows. I mean, was he a challenge to play? Because you and I talked during this process, but what was he like to take on?
Woof. That was such an interesting blend of truth and fiction, that piece in and of itself. And I found some odd sense of fiction in the story that we were telling, while trying to honor who the true guy was as well. 4 of the actors came over from the London production, who were so generous and so much fun, and the 12 of us who were new to the production just opened our hearts and jumped around and learned the choreography for a very complicated story. A lot to say in a very short amount of time. The guy who was basically responsible for the rise of Putin. And who he was, what he was proud of. I just listened to his voice over and over and over again. And I think at the initial production in London, everyone spoke with British dialects, and there was something about hearing his voice in my ear over and over again. I had a really hard time relinquishing, wanting to let go of how he sounded to me, because it was important to me to try to, in one way or another, because most people don't know who he was, or who he was. sort of hold on to something that seemed right to me or true about who he was. I tried to shape my body like his. I tried to move in the way that I thought he would move. And I held on to a touch of a Slavic dialect from listening to him communicate. And he seemed gregarious and fun and so smart. And it was a mountain to climb, as large, if not larger, than anything I've ever tried to do, and a privilege.
Very Shakespearean. I mean, in the best way, when you look at people who take on the role like King Lear, this was such a monster of a role, like you
It
said.
had elements of Richard III, and it had elements of King Lear in it.
Yeah.
There, I mean, direct correlations in many places. Timon of Athens, the complete, offering someone the world and then ending up, desolate at the end of the play. Very Shakespearean, and I think it was complicated. And I think it was also a different play in London than it was here as well. It happened partially in their backyard, so I think it was a story they were much more familiar with than we were, and also the distance of Russia being, further away from our country. I'm not sure if everybody understood how it might have any relevance to our culture at the time.
Yeah.
But it was still a privilege to play.
Yeah. My final questions are to talk about two of your latest projects. One is the new film After the Hunt, which teams you once again with director Luca opposite Julia Roberts this time. What can you tell us about working with Julia? You two had the best time, right?
She's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
She's a kick. She admittedly says she brings, where she feels like has sort of downplayed any sense of her own intellect, which is profound. She always says what she does like to bring is love and magic to whatever it is that she can when she does. And she also sort of thinks of herself as mother hen, and she wants to take care of people. She provided a space in her home for all of us to rehearse together before the shooting commenced. I was doing the play at the time, so I couldn't join them, unfortunately. But everybody else had a wonderful time in her home and for a few days. And then she's also a staunch believer in family, and that was her first priority. I've never worked with anybody who really felt in their being as much as she does, how when the clock strikes a particular time, she's back with her children, back with her husband, and it's very moving to be around. And she also treats everyone like their family members too, which is profound as well. She was generous. She loves laughing, as you can imagine. And I didn't get to know her very well before we started. Honestly, it was like maybe 15 minutes of time together, maybe a little bit more than that, but we didn't rehearse at all. So I showed up, and we just jumped in, and we instantly kind of felt, because we'd both been in long relationships in some ways, to play an older couple that had been together for many, many years, it kind of was a sweet spot for both of us, and we kind of enjoyed that tremendously. And to get to, I mean, that was something that Luca shared with me before we started, which was he felt my character, Frederick, was the heart of the story in a lot of ways, and that it was my job to be an absolute support system for her character in the story, who I had nursed back to health after she had been ill. So getting to be that for her was really fun.
You were so wonderful in this film.
Thanks.
The two of you together. It seems like this is what great acting is. It's like you get to 15 minutes beforehand, and then you fall in love with each other, and you create this backstory. But it's such a beautiful film.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. And there's also an untitled film you just made with Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the craziest thing I've ever been a part of in my life.
It'll stay here, just so you know.
It's fantastic. My God. That was nuts. This film was directed by Alejandro Iñárritu.
Okay.
Who made Birdman and The Revenant and Bardo, and among many other films. I was watching a film with Javier Bardem the other night.
Yeah.
Beautiful. He's made all kinds of extraordinary films, and he's an artist at the height of his creative powers. And the cast is Tom Cruise, John Goodman, Jesse Plemons, Sandra Hüller, God, who else is in there? Riz Ahmed. It's an extraordinary group of people, and I can't wait to see what it is. And we spent, I arrived in October and left in May the following year, so it was the longest shoot I've ever been a part of. And it was his passion project, something he's been working on for years. And to be in that sort of proximity to those kinds of kids, it was really fun.
Yeah.
Talk about willpower. Just the fact that film was made to begin with, and to watch the power of tenacity that all of those artists had who created that piece. I'm so anxious for people to see it, and I can't say I don't think much more than that about it, but it was a privilege.
Finally, you have this incredible career. Like, we've gone through just some of it. I mean, we've just skimmed the surface of all of this. But looking back at what you've given us as audiences, right? I mean, and working with these great directors and screenwriters and actors, like I said, After the Hunt you have now, which is all around the world, the new Tom Cruise film. What do you enjoy the most about being an actor? Seriously, when you look at your breadth and your career that you have, what do you enjoy the most?
Talking to each other, I guess. Yeah. Connecting. The opportunity to understand what it's like to be somebody else other than yourself, to get some perspective on what other people might be going through, with the difficulties in their lives, to brighten other people's lives, because it's a hard time in our world for a lot of people. It's always a hard time in lives, but it's unlike any other time I've ever known right now. And it is a privilege, and it's something to remember. It's something that brings us together and makes us talk to each other in its best form. Initially, I think, at its heart for me, it was the language of what's being said. Watching Derek Jacobi play Hamlet, that there were words that moved me as a young person and made me feel less alone. And it's a privilege to get to be up here and to be with you all, and to connect a little bit, because I think a lot of the time we don't get to connect with each other because we get so caught up in our own lives. It's one of the privileges of what we get to do when we get to do it, is connecting with each other. I've always loved rehearsal the most, because you can ask a million questions, you can make mistakes. I mean, you can even make mistakes when you're working, I suppose. How else do you learn? By trying something and risking something. And as a life practice, it gave me some sea legs as a professional. I'm still the shy kid I was, who prefers to draw in his room. And I shun, I just always remember, at the heart of all of this, it's this. It's just you and me talking to each other. It's just a connection. It's got to be that. And sometimes I forget, to be honest with you. I mean, you go to drama school, you learn how to speak or how to move or how to do this or how to do that, and you think that's what it is. And those are tools, which I think took me years to remember, to apply to what it is that we do, which is just a part in telling a story. How do we access those things that happen on a profound day in our lives? It's a funny way to go through life, but it's a blessing and a privilege, and there's nothing like it when it's good. I think that's probably why I keep wanting to do it and why I'm so sort of impatient to get on to the next thing, because I just want to feel that thing again, you know? Really, it's a kind of addiction, I guess. It is. I mean, it really is. There's nothing like this when it's exhilarating and people get you, you know? Get each other. Nothing like that. And life's so short that there's nothing like connecting in it and loving purely and offering goodness in places where it may not be seen anywhere. Yeah. So that's what I look for in a piece, and that's why I love to do this at its best. And thank you for the privilege of sharing my experiences with you guys tonight. I mean, it is a privilege, and thank you. Thank you for having me along.
Thank you for being here with me. Let's hear it for Michael Stuhlbarg.